again, 17. Bhotikanam cha bhavanam. Oh, sorry. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Verse 17 and 18. Bhotikanam cha bhavanam. Shakti hrasham cha tatkritam. Ashadhanam nishatvam. Durmadhan hrishita yushaha. Durbhagam cha janadvikshya munirdivyena chakshusha sarvavarnashramanam yad dadhyam hitam amogradrik.
Hare Krishna. The great sage who was fully equipped in knowledge could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of the men in all statuses and orders of life. Hare Krishna.
Verse 19. Chaturhotram karma sudham rajanam vikshya vyadhadha yajna satatye vedam ekam chaturvidam.
He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into four in order to expand them among men. Hare Krishna.
Verse 20. Rigyajur samatar vedya vedaschattvara udharataha itihasa puranam cha panchamo veda uchyate.
The four divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the fifth Veda. Hare Krishna.
Verse 21. Tatar Veda Dhara Pelaha Samago Jaiminihi Kavihi Vaishampayena Eveko Nishnato Yajusam Uta.
After the Vedas were divided into four divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of Rig Veda, Jaimini the professor of Samaveda, and Vaisamyapyana alone became glorified by the Yajurveda.
Verse 22. Atarve Vanigraham Sam Ashit Suman Daruno Munihi Itihasa Purananam Itamero Maharshanaha.
The Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda, and my father Romashana was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records.
Verse 23. Ta Eta Rishayo Vedam Svam Svam Vyasayan Anekadha Shishyehi Prashishye Vedaste Sakino Bhavan.
All these learned scholars, in their turn, rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of Vedas came into being.
Verse 24. Ta eva Veda Durmedreir Dharyante Purushe Yatham Evam Chakra Bhagavan Vyasaha Kripana Vatshalaha.
Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intellectual men.
Verse 25. Sri Shudya Sri Shudradvija Bandhunam Trayina Shruti Gochara Karma Shreyasi Nutanam Shreya Evam Bhava Iha Iti Bharatam Akhyanam Kripaya Munina Kritam.
Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus, he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for the women, lovers, and friends of the twice born.
Verse 26. evam pravritasya bhutanam shreyasi dvija sarvatma kemapi yada natushyad dradhayam tatha.
Vote twice-born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in the working for the total welfare of all people. Hare Krishna.
Verse 27. Nati prashidad dridayah sharasvatsya sukau vidya vidakayan viviktastha idam chovacha dharmavi.
Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself.
Verse 28 to 29. Dhritavrtena himaya chandam shri guravo gnayah manita nirvyaklikena kritam chanushasanam bharata vyapadeshena yamya amayartascha pradarshitah darshyate yatra dharmadi shri shudradi bhira.
Aha, under disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I also
Dear devotees, can we please be unmuted? Please be on mute. Prabhu, I'm going to mute everybody.
Verse 30.
nine text ones, and the shown the Mahabharata, by which even Sudras
Text 30. Mana iva bhati Brahmavarch.
with everything required by the Vedas.
Text nirupitah priyaha paramahamsanam ta eva hi achita priyaha.
This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to infallible Lord.
Text 32. Tasyevam kilamatmanam manyamanasya kidyataha krishnasya narado bhyagad ashramam udahritam.
As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa on the banks of Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects.
Text 33. Tam abhijanaya sahasha pratyutaya gatam munihi pujayam asha vidhivan naradam sura pujitam.
At the
Hare
auspicious
Krishna.
arrival of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, and thank you, Mataji, for that wonderful recitation. So, welcome everybody once again who have just joined us in this yagya of chanting some verses from Srimad-Bhagavatam and having some discussion. So today we will be covering few texts. I believe Vrindavan Chand Prabhu did text 19 yesterday. Is that correct?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so today we will be covering text 20 onwards. Let me just check my notes to make sure that I have mentioned from text 20 to 23 just to... Oh, I mentioned 34. I do apologize. It was supposed to be 23. So let's, I think 22 or 23. We'll see. We'll cover those texts now. Here we are. So this is the first text. Tatrag Vedadhara Pala Samago Jamini Kavi Vaishampayano Evaiko Nishnato Yajushu Uta. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Palya Rishi became the professor of Rig Veda, Jamini the professor of the Sama Veda, and Vashampayana alone became glorified by the Yajur Veda. The different Vedas were purport. The different Vedas were entrusted to different learned scholars for development in various ways. Text 22. Atharvanigrisham asit sumantur daruno muni itihasa purananam pita mero maharshana. Translation. The Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with Atharva Ved, and my father Romaharshan was entrusted with Puranas and historical records. Purport. In the Shruti mantras also it is stated that Angira Muni, who strictly followed the rigid principles of the Atharva Veda, was the leader of the followers of the Atharva Veda. A quick quiz question. Let's see who can answer this question. The translation reads, the Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with Atharva Veda, and my father Romaharshana was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records. Who is the son here?
Suta Goswami.
Fantastic. Who is that? Partha Prabhu, is it?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, very good. Great. Next text. Text 23. That's right. We'll cover till text 23 today. Ta eta rasayo vedam swam swam vyasayan anekada shishyaye prashishyastakchisher vedaste sakino bhavan. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. All these learned scholars, in their turn, rendered their entrusted Vedas onto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great-grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. Purport. The original source of knowledge is the Vedas. There are no branches of knowledge, either mundane or transcendental, which do not belong to the original text of the Vedas. They have simply been developed into different branches. They were originally rendered by great, respectable, and learned professors. In other words, the Vedic knowledge, broken into the different branches by different disciplic succession, has been distributed all over the world. No one therefore can claim independent knowledge beyond the Vedas. What an interesting section. So it is a little bit of a technical session, my dear devotees. So what we will be doing is we're going to be spending a little bit of a time in just kind of, I highlighted some points today as I was preparing for this session, that let's look at each of these elements separately and how they have been explained by our previous acharyas and what Srila Prabhupada has like referred to in some of his purports. So we're going to look at that today in this. So before we do that, I'd like to seek the blessings of our previous acharyas and teachers, so we can speak something for my own purification. And in the process of doing so, if I say something which is of some benefit to all of you, then I would consider this session a success. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute तप्त कांचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So let's look at these verses. Okay, which literature is this? 10 points, whoever answers this question.
Bhagavatam.
Bhagavatam, Srimad
Bhagavatam.
Bhagavatam.
Srimad-Bhagavatam.
Fantastic. Wow. How did you guys know about that?
It's written on it.
Okay, great. Yes. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, correct. So let's just look at some of the points which were highlighted and something which we use often in our presentation when we invite some people who are new to Bhagavatam but have some idea of our Vedic scriptures. So you see, at an initial stage, it is explained that there were four Vedas: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. Then came the 108 Upanishads, 16 Puranas, then obviously Mahabharata, and then finally all of this was summarized into Vedanta Sutra by Srila Vyasadeva. And we will talk about that towards the end, and we will hear more verses about it later on in this week's presentation. And Bhagavatam is in essence considered the essence of all this knowledge. So now what I'd like to do is just look at some of the examples which our previous acharyas give to understand the Vedas. So the first example here is Kanta Mataji or Prabhu. Since you're unmute, maybe you could read this paragraph for us and then you could mute yourself. Is that possible? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Kanta Mataji, would you like to read this example for us to understand the Vedas? It's okay if you can't.
It doesn't.
Okay.
Oh,
Jai
sorry, it doesn't let me.
Oh, okay, don't worry. Jai Shri Mataji, would you please kindly unmute and
Yeah,
read this example?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes.
I can do that now.
Oh, you can do that now. Kanta Mataji, you do this one, and Jai Shri Mataji, you do the next one after this line. Go ahead, Kanta Mataji.
The structure of the Vedic scriptures can be compared to a staircase with many steps, with specific scriptures corresponding to each step. The Vedic scriptures describe both the goal and the steps leading up to this goal. They are non-sectarian because they respect people of all steps. They simply encourage everyone to progress up to the next step. There is no question of converting or pushing because everyone has to walk for himself or herself. Or as two Vedic sayings goes, even in a flock of birds, each bird has to fly for itself. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So if you all imagine for a moment here, Kanta Mataji, if you can mute yourself, that will be great. So here you can see in this particular example, just imagine there is a staircase and there are scriptures. And what is being said here, that the Vedic scriptures describe both the goal and the steps leading up to this goal. So any Vedic scripture you take, Vyasadeva gives the essence in the beginning, and Prabhupada explains this as well in many places, that there is a Vedic tree which has many branches and many leaves and there are many fruits. And among those, among the tree, there is a branch for Yajurveda, there is a branch for Rig Veda, Atharva Veda. Like that, there are all these different Vedas. However, ultimately, the essence of all these Vedic scriptures, whether you go to Rig Veda and learn about the music, for example, or you go to Yajur Veda, you learn about the art, like so many other things are given, but ultimately the conclusion of all of those things is leading to the point of coming to devotional service. And that is the reason why, although Vyasadeva divided all these things and then he presented the four Vedas and all of that, that's the very reason, after doing all this hard work, yet he was not content in his heart. Now I want you all to look at some of these definitions, and let's have a look at the four Vedas, which describes what these four Vedas are. So if we can have Jayashri Mataji read this, and then Yashwini Sachi Mataji, you could read the next one after this.
The Four Vedas. The Four Vedas, the scriptures of this category, are generally labeled as the original Vedic scriptures. These four Vedas are known as Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. Rig means ritual, and it contains mainly hymns and prayers, mantras, in the worship of the universal forces called the demigods. Yajur means ceremony, and it mainly describes how to perform the rituals. Sama means singing. The scriptures of these categories contain many other mantras as well as strict rules how to chant these mantras according to mystic vibrations. Atharva means a priest who knows the secret law. These scriptures describe many different kinds of worship and invocations. In a broader sense, many other scriptures of material knowledge are also counted in the Atharva, like the Ayurveda, pharmacological sciences, and the means to maintain health.
Thank you. So now, you see, Srila Prabhupada himself hasn't gone to a great degree to explain each of these Vedas, simply because Prabhupada says that when we have what we've been given is the essence of the Vedanta Sutra in the form of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is in itself sufficient enough to realize the God. So much so that Srila Prabhupada writes in the preface of first canto of the Bhagavatam that when someone systematically goes through Srimad Bhagavatam from canto 1 to 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Prabhupada writes a clear statement that if someone very systematically goes and reads this Bhagavatam up to the 9th canto, he will be God realized. He'll be self-realized. And then he will come to the platform of 10th canto, and then one can further progress to become Krishna realized, as in to realize Krishna as in the feature of Bhagavan and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, a lot of times in our course of sharing Krishna consciousness with others, or trying to cultivate and working with some friends, families, people often have these questions. Well, like I remember a few days ago on a Sunday table, somebody walked up to me and he said, do you keep Yajur Veda? And I was like, whoa. so that was a very interesting conversation. So then obviously at that moment, I also sometimes get confused, which is what, but suffice to, say these things are very important. So if you try to remember these simple aspects, that Rig means ritual, and it mainly contains hints and prayers. So remember, Rig Veda and Yajur Veda to a great degree are ritualistic Vedic scriptures. Even the Yajur means ceremony, and it also contains many rituals and many mantras which are recited specifically in relation to worshipping the devatas. Again, one may think, okay, why is the emphasis given on this as a devatas? Because Krishna is telling in the Bhagavad-Gita that to the degree of the modes of material nature we are influenced, to that degree Krishna then allows us to worship a particular demigod where our Shraddha is, where our faith is. And gradually the idea is one can then rise above and come to the level where we can start to worship Krishna. But Krishna doesn't really interfere with that. However, the devotees of the Krishna are so kind that they come and interfere in our life. Like I wouldn't call myself a staunch worshipper of Hanuman, but I was quite seriously, I used to chant Hanuman Chalisa and I used to feel a lot of strength. And I was very happy until my good wife came to my life. We got married. And then she started to tell me a little bit about, Krishna. Of course, I had heard of Lord Ram. But for me, Hanumanji was everything. I was like, he's my Ishtadev. I'm very happy to worship. Leave me alone. I'll just chant my Hanuman Chalisa. And then slowly, gradually, there came an altar as we got married. An altar had a beautiful picture of Giriraj, Giriraj from Govardhan. It had a tall picture of Srimati Radharani, because that's what Mahanidhi Swami Maharaj, who my wife was first initiated by, had as their Ishtadev. And then slowly, slowly and steadily, whatever used to cook would come there, and used to get offered. So I used to get, okay, wow, okay, so why are we doing this? So in that whole process, one day I picked up a beautiful book called Chaitanya Mangal. It's a book written by Lochan Das Thakur, and Mahanidhi Maharaj has given a beautiful commentary. I mean, he's taken that commentary and written it in English. Very nice book. And when I read, it has childhood pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and I had never ever come across something like that. And I had tears in my eyes when I was reading for no reason. I had no idea why I'm crying. And then I started to understand, what I have been introduced to is the most sublime process, is the most sublime Lord of all the Lords, the most merciful incarnation is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I immediately started to feel this is very special. Then the next book I hooked onto was Science of Self-Realization. And watching those dialogues between the scientist and the Srila Prabhupada back and forth on soul, body, karma, reincarnation, I was like, wow. And that's when all these things starting to kind of make sense. So just remember that the first, and then sama means singing. The S for sama and S for singing. The scriptures of these categories contains many other mantras, but it predominantly talks about the culture of singing, Samaveda. Then you have Atharva, which means the priestly instructions, who knows the secret lore. These scriptures describe many different kinds of worship and invocations. Swaha, all those kind, which we use for worship. In a broader sense, many other scriptures of material knowledge. So you see, in essence, the four Vedas, they don't directly propound pure devotional service. But Bhagavatam, where does it begin? It begins on that platform. Right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, in the first canto, it has been established that it is a literature, it's the topmost literature which is only giving pure devotional service. Dharma projita kaitvo tra parama, completely rejecting all the other cheating religions, just giving pure devotional service. That's what Bhagavatam is doing. So that was Vedas. Yashwini Mataji, if you be so kind to now give us why we should accept Vedas, if you could read that.
Why accept Vedas? All of these teachings are supposed to encourage a human being to understand that he is not an independent entity. Rather, he is a part of a universal body, depending on many higher forces. The most important lesson of these four Vedas is to learn that everyone has to accept higher authorities. If you link up with these divine forces through the proper form and contents, ritual and understanding, then you will profit materially and experience some peace and harmony.
Great, thank you. So very important fundamental point. One may ask the question why we should accept the Vedas. Now, there are two levels of understanding this. One level is at the level which has been explained here, that as Krishna says, that in the Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord says that it's better to perform your own duty, even though it may not be, there may be some fault in it, rather than taking on someone's duty and trying to do that to perfection. So this is the point here. It is a gradual upliftment, but the most important point is that there is some level of authority you are accepting. You are coming to the point to acknowledge there is someone higher than you. Even if somebody like me who accepted Lord Hanuman as his master or the only master, there was a sense that I accepted the authority. Whereas especially the case with Hanuman is slightly exceptional because he's the pure devotee of the Lord. So there is always that sweeter or a positive risk of him leading one to the lotus feet of Lord Ram. So that's the connection which one may have with Lord Shiva and Hanuman if it is worshipped in that connection. But if one is totally looking for material prosperity, then unfortunately we are not in the right direction. So the second point of understanding the Vedas is that one may start to begin to read Veda, but someone is so inquisitive. As Krishna says in the Gita, there are four kind of people who are looking after looking for me, and one is an inquisitive. So someone who's inquisitive, he will just not be satisfied. He'll be like, no, I need to know a bit more than this, bit more than this, bit more than, and then he will eventually arrive at the platform of, okay, what's after the four Vedas? Okay, there is Mahabharata. Okay, fine. In the Mahabharata, there is a section called Bhagavad-Gita. Now that talks about pure devotional service. So let me hear about that. So it does creates that sattva gun for one to transcend from that material platform and start to penetrate the spiritual platform where one can come in the association of the devotees and the scriptures. Okay, so let's go to the next section. Hema Mataji, if you be so kind to read and tell us what are Upanishads. If you're speaking, you're on mute, Mataji. If
Oh, sorry,
not,
sorry,
that's
Prabhuji.
no
Sorry.
problem.
Yeah. Okay. What is Upanishads? I just need to turn it around. Yeah. The Upanishads, woven into the four Vedas, are the different kinds of philosophical discussions, like the Aranyakas and the Brahmanas. Most significant are the Upanishads, sitting beneath, i.e., knowledge obtained from a spiritual teacher. These texts indicate that all material forms are transient. They are temporary manifestations of an eternal energy, which in itself is beyond material duality. They indicate the oneness behind the variety and inspire people engaged in the rituals of the Vedas to go beyond their short-term goals.
Thank you so much. So Upanishads act as a platform from the transition from the Vedas into almost into the devotional service realm here. As you can see, they indicate the oneness behind the variety and inspire people engaged in the rituals of the Vedas to go beyond the short-term goals. Because when you are attached to the Vedas, then Krishna tells in the Bhagavad-Gita that their results are very short-lived. That, okay, somebody is in mode of passion, he's desiring to achieve something, he achieves, okay, then he's after something else. So there is always that factor where one is driven by the results, and sometimes they come very, very quickly. So this is a very important factor. The second very important instruction which is used here is the meaning of the word Upanishads. It either means sitting beneath or sitting up close. So often my Guru Maharaj, so when we are hearing the Krishna Katha, that's why you see when Rupa Goswami, Upadesha Amrita, right? So this is the Upadesha Amrita given by Rupa Goswami. You see the word here. The most significant are the Upanishads, knowledge obtained from a spiritual master. So those instructions which are given to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Srila Rupa Goswami, they have been now passed down in the form of Upadesha Amrita. So these are Upanishads. So that is the meaning of the word Upanishad. Now we will go into the next section, and let's have somebody else read the section. Who do we have? Do we have? Okay, Rasalila Mataji, if you could read the next one, and then Shailesh Prabhu, if you don't mind reading the one after that. Let's understand Vedanta Sutra. Mataji, if you're trying to speak, you're on mute. If not, we can go over to Shailesh Prabhu. Shailesh Prabhu, would you like to read the definition of Vedanta Sutra?
Vedanta Sutra, 560 condensed aphorisms which define the Vedic truths in most general terms in order to provide a common ground for argument to all different kinds of philosophical schools. Therefore, the commentaries to the Vedanta Sutras are voluminous.
Thank you. So Vedanta Sutras are the sutras given on the Vedas, and also all of these, like the Puranas, they all been put together, but they are so lengthy that who was this? I think is it Karthik Chandra Prabhu? I can't remember. Somebody was telling that if you start to read, I think it was, how many pages was it per day? 108. It would take you probably almost 70 years to finish the the one section of the Vedanta Sutra. That's how long they are actually. So that was Vedanta Sutra. And then we have Tantric Scriptures. Who will tell us about Tantric Scriptures? Shriji Kishori Mataji, would you like to tell us about Tantric Scriptures?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yes, please. Thank you. Not everybody is inclined to follow the methods of the Vedas, which demand strictness, purity, faith, and patience. Impatient, ignorant people demand results on the spot, and these can be obtained by magic, ghost worship, etc. By providing such knowledge, the Vedic scriptures encourage the faith of such occult people so that one day or lifetime they may develop interest in the higher, in the higher aspects of the Veda. These literatures are within the modes of passion and ignorance. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So since today is the divine disappearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was one acharya in our line who worked extremely hard. During that time, there was a time where a lot of uh, activities were happening to either derive the Vedic scriptures or, more importantly, establishing the Brahmanas on the basis of the birth rather than the basis of qualities. And the other thing which was prevailing at that time was Tantric Scriptures and the Tantrics who were around. And we have all heard of this famous Tantric. I do not remember his name right now, but it's mentioned in the autobiography of Bhaktivinoda Thakur that how this person had such powers that everybody almost used to worship them in the town as God. Only when Bhaktivinoda Thakur decided to bring him out of that aspect and show them that he's just a person with some powers and not a god, what the Tantric did, he, by his yogic powers, he managed to uh, put the entire family of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in a very precarious condition. His health was extremely poor, and sorry, the family fell sick. Everybody had fever at the same time, and everyone, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, of course, because he had such shraddha in the scriptures, in his spiritual master, that he decided that no, I'm going to do my best. He then put him behind the bars, and as he did, he managed to cut off his jata or the big sika he had, and immediately that person fell down and he lost all his powers actually. So this goes to shows that, you see, everything good or bad is coming from Krishna, and either from Krishna or through the energy of Krishna. So we understand that Lord Shiva is also known as Bhutanath. He's also known as someone who's a worshipper by the ghost. So such people still exist who believe in Tantric, who believe, and there is a Tantric Vidhi, there is a Tantric Gyan, where actually one can learn how to do black magic, how to create ill health for somebody. So all these activities going on, but to be honest, especially right now, they are in the name only, because even those people, they hardly exist, because in order to be able to do some things, like I'll give you an example, someone who keeps the Maun Vrat and does not speak something, eventually he comes and he has the power that when he says something, that can come true. But just try to remember very important aspect, that let's not be allured by these kind of knowledge or powers, because ultimately everything rests in Krishna. If Krishna wants, then he will completely help us to come above all these various Tantric and the Vedic scriptures and rise to the platform of accepting Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we are going to come to. So please try. This is a very fundamental point when we are trying to share Krishna consciousness with others. A lot of people will ask, especially if you go preach in India and you meet some people from Indian background, they're very driven by Kali Puja. They're very driven by Mahakali. Like I heard some people recently, I was there and it was in Jai Mahakali, Jai Mahakali. What does that mean? They're coming from, this is their scripture, Tantric scriptures. That's what they read. That's what they want to specialize in. And the fruits are very, very quick. But we see in Bhagavatam, there is so many stories. Let's take a story, for example, of Jat Bharat, right? When he was caught by these people in the forest, they took him, and they were the worshippers of Mahakali, and they wanted to offer Jat Bharat into, as an offering to him. But they realized that one of his thumb, I believe it was thumb, right, or a finger something was missing, and they realized that they can't do it. But for some reason or other, or maybe I'm confusing. So they were going to do it, but Mahakali herself, she came out with her sword and she killed everyone. So you see, wherever there is a devotional service, it's all auspicious. There's no question of Tantric and all these things. Okay, let's have a quick reading of Atihas. So who would like to, Venkat Prabhu, would you like to read Atihas? Tell us what Atihas is. You're on mute, Venkat Prabhu, if you're trying to speak. Okay.
I don't mind reading.
Go ahead, Vanita Mataji.
These are the historical works, mainly the Ramayana, the history of the incarnation Rama, the 18 Puranas, 18 Sub-Puranas, universal history of creation, and annihilation, the incarnations in the great kings, saints, and teachers, and the Mahabharata, the history of the ancient India, called Bharata, leading up to the appearance of Krishna 5,000 years ago. These scriptures are essential because they expand the understanding of the absolute beyond the abstract, impersonal platform. The absolute and supremely perfect and complete. That's why it is both impersonal and personal. Actually, the personal aspect is original source of the secondary impersonal existence of the Lord, since an impersonal energy cannot be source of persons. The Atihas reveal this personal feature, gradually introducing and identifying it, culminating in the purely monistic revelations of Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam.
Thank you. So here you see there is a very nice definition given of what Atihas are and what is the purpose of the Atihas. So they transcend one from the journey of an impersonalism to personal. So like when you hear about Ramayana, you heard about, you see, it's such a beautiful transition if you start to think, you know, coming to the realm of understanding and accepting God as Ram is an extremely very high level of consciousness. Please try to understand in this age of Pashyat Desha Tarini, where Prabhupada's Pranam mantra is mentioned, should Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. So there is Nirvishesha and there is Shunyavad. So in this age, if you find somebody and he says, I believe in Lord Ram and he was God, that person should be paid respect. That person should be paid a lot of respect because that person has come to the understanding that he accepts Lord or God as a person. It is the highest level of conception at least one can have. So similarly, you see the word Itihas, when you read about Mahabharata, when you read about Ramayana, it's all personalism there. Some Itihasas, they will be in a conception of impersonal, as it is said, is a combination, but mostly Ramayana is a transcendental literature. When you touch Ramayana, you've come to a very high level of consciousness. And as you come forward from Ramayana and go into Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam, now you're really going in deep in your, really understanding among all these forms that Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. Ete cham kala pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So it establishes the fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now we conclude on Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So if I can have, do we have any Prabhuji who would like to volunteer, since we have many Matajis who would like to read this part?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, can I read, please?
Please go ahead, Prabhu.
Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam. These sacred texts are designated even by the Vedic scriptures themselves as the most important, essential revelations. They directly describe the nature, energy, and the person of God, who is both immanent as Vishnu and transcendent as Krishna, source of everything, the cause of all causes, of both the impersonal and personal manifestations. Bhagavad-Gita, God's song, is a word spoken by God, and Srimad-Bhagavatam, divine revelation, is the words about God spoken by the representatives of the God. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So this is my one request I have to all the 51 devotees here, that believe it or not, I think I will be right in saying, and you'll probably agree with me, that if you even look at 90% of the people, let's take, there are, just say, okay, let's just hypothetical example, there are 100 people who have heard, they are somehow have some idea of Vedic scriptures. Out of the 100 people, 92 people will struggle to explain you what the difference between the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is. And I have experienced this through my service at the table or on book distribution when we tell people, do you have this? They say, yes, I have the Gita. So this is a very important aspect when we are serving or trying to speak to others. or trying to distribute Srimad-Bhagavatam, right at the very outset, you should clarify. And it's not a good question to ask, do you have this? I immediately asked a question to them when I welcomed them to the table, and I go straight into saying, Hare Krishna Prabhu, since you have already heard of the Bhagavad Gita, let me share something about the Bhagavatam. And I also sometimes say, I'm sure you've already heard of Bhagavatam, but let me just share something for my own benefit and we can glorify Krishna together. So that way, of course, because people coming from that heritage or Indian background feel very privileged when you introduce the literature to them like that. But during my presentation, I make the point to very distinctively clarify what is the difference between Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, because that is an illuminating point, a platform in that person's journey. When you make that clear, then he or she becomes a little bit open towards hearing the Bhagavatam presentation. So it's a key when we are trying to introduce this literature to others. So finally, concluding, some words from Srila Prabhupada's purport. So if we can have someone who would like to read first paragraph and then another devotee for the second one, please. Anyone?
You want me to read, Prabhu?
Oh yes, Chandrasekhar Prabhu, please do.
Right. According to the Vedanta Sutras, Shastra Yonitvat, the Supreme Lord is the author of all revealed scriptures, and all revealed scriptures are for knowing the Supreme Lord. Veda means knowledge that leads to the Lord. The Vedas are made just to revive the forgotten consciousness of the conditioned souls. And any literature not meant for reviving good consciousness is rejected at once by the Narayana Para devotees. Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, verse 50, purport.
Thank you. So you see, Prabhupada is giving a very distinctive idea of how we should accept the Vedas, what the Vedas are meant for, and what kind of scriptures or literatures we should develop our priti or our love or affection towards. Okay, can we have another devotee who could read the last second paragraph here?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I'll read it.
Yes, please, Mataji.
The word Veda means knowledge. Supreme knowledge consists of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead and our relationship with Him, and acting according to that relationship. Action in accordance with the Vedic principles is called religion. Religion means following the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedic principles are the injunctions given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aryans are civilized human beings who have been following the Vedic principles since time immemorial. Sri Chaitanya Charimrita 2.19, 146 purport.
Thank you. So this is what Prabhupada gives us his conclusion in the purports of Srimad Bhagavatam, both in the second canto, once in the 5th chapter and in the 19th chapter, that how everything is emanating from Krishna, including all the scriptures, and how they are actually meant to understand Krishna. Vedasya chaham, what is that verse? Famous verse. Sarvasya chaham hidi sanivishto jnanam apohonam cha. It's not coming to my mind, but the idea of the Vedas is that the compiler, Krishna is the compiler of the Vedas, and of all the Vedas, he should be the one to be known. So as long as the Vedas are helping us come to this conclusion, then we are in good hands. If they are not, then we may be directed to many different kinds of births in heavenly planets and many other places, and still going up and down actually. So in conclusion, just as Vyasadeva was feeling despondent, Narad Muni, he arrived as his spiritual master, allowing Vyasadeva the opportunity to reveal his heart and thus get a remedy for his despondency. Very important line here, Prabhus and Matajis, please note. Oftentimes we think it is Narad Muni who actually told him what the problem was. Actually, Vyasadeva, he himself, through his revelation, came to the conclusion, if you read the Bhagavatam, it is explained there, he came to the conclusion himself that the problem is that I haven't glorified Lord's. First problem was actually, he said, I have overemphasized on dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And the second problem is, I haven't really described or glorified the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, in detail. And all Narad Muni did, like a spiritual master does, he gave him an affirmation. He confirmed that, yes, you are absolutely correct, Srila Vyasadeva. As an empowered incarnation of Krishna, you are spot on. So please do the needful. That is all Narad Muni did. He gave the instruction, and with that came an empowerment, and Vyasadeva sat down and wrote this beautiful literature for our benefit. and he compiled this wonderful work, Srimad-Bhagavatam. Thus, that brings us to our today's session's conclusion, leaving us for about 10 minutes for question and answers. There are a couple of announcements I wanted to make. Tomorrow, we have a very special opportunity. We will be having a recitation of Srimad-Bhagavatam with Mahotsaha Prabhu. Shri Kishori Mataji, I think I did mention to you a while ago, but if I haven't reminded you, I'm sorry. If we can have the reciters for tomorrow adjusted somewhere else or in the future, I'll be grateful, because Mahotsaha Prabhu, who's been distributing Bhagavatam sets all over US or many places, and we have seen some of the pictures circulated by Keshav Prabhu, we will have the privilege to have his association on this platform tomorrow with us, where we will interview him. Keshav Prabhu will be interviewing him and he will be giving his answers, and we will all get an opportunity to get inspired to do something worthwhile in the mission of Srila Prabhupada. So don't miss this opportunity. At 7:45 to 8 o'clock will be the recitation with him of Bhagavatam, of the same verses we've been reciting. He will lead us onto the recitation, and then we will start a dialogue with Prabhuji, and you can all be part of that during this chat session. So please take part in that. That was my first announcement. Second announcement, I wanted to remind everybody, as when was my last session? Saturday, I did a session, and we have launched a retreat to Calcutta, Mayapur, and Jagannath Puri. If anybody hasn't seen the brochure, I circulated it on the group. And if you want to know more, or you can't find the brochure, then you can message me on this number. 07831830527. There's been a lot of interest in the retreat, and we're looking forward to going on this retreat to build our connection to Dham, especially going to the birthplace of Srila Prabhupada, and also to Ulta Danga Junction Road, where Prabhupada met his spiritual master for the first time and got the instruction of his life, which has actually helped us now to where we are today. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share those details with you. And finally, today is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Disappearance Day. Today we had a beautiful class from Kadambakana Maharaj in the morning, who talked about the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and how wonderful he was actually considered as the seventh Goswami. His life was of dedication to serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was a pure devotee of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and that really comes across in his various songs and bhajan. And Maharaj ended on the class on this note, that it's very important that today we read something about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We read a bhajan, we sing a bhajan, or we hear about him. I'm sorry I didn't time it well, otherwise we could have sang a bhajan of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It would have been very, very appropriate. But let's see if anyone has any comments, any questions or reflections from today's session. Anything which you felt was helpful, which you were not aware of before, you could reflect back, and that can help us illuminate some light on this section. Thank you, Partha Prabhu. You have a very nice name, Prabhu. Is that an initiated name, Prabhu?
No, Prabhu, Hare Krishna. I mean, it's a normal name. It's a natural.
Okay. What does it mean, Partha?
I mean, Partha is Arjuna, and
Partha. Oh, okay.
Partha is Arjuna, and Sarathi is the chariot.
Sarathi. Okay, it's spelled slightly differently. That's why I got confused. Okay, that makes sense now. Nice. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, I'll share the slides, Prabhu. No problem. And thank you for your encouraging words.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, my humble obeisance.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
What is the difference between Puranas and Atihas?
So there is actually not one thing is a similarity in Puranas and Atihas. They are both Atihas in one way. We heard that, and it was referred in some places. Now, however, distinctively, Puranas are 18. Which are 18 in the spiritual sense, and there are 18 which are referred as a universal sense of the universal form of the Lord. So those are Puranas, whereas Atihas, actually when you use the word Atihas, you can put all the Puranas in the Atihas section, including the Mahabharatas and everything. Actually, it's a broader word, but Puranas really go into the various different 18 Puranas, and then you obviously have the Bhagavad Purana. So essentially those are a couple of points, Mataji, I can shed light on.
So Itihas, so Ramayana and Mahabharata are Itihas?
Yes, they are considered as Atihas. Well, you see, this is the thing. Ramayana as such Atihas, and as well as, you see, I mean, from my limited understanding and learning, Ramayana is a transcendental literature, and similarly, as a Atihas, even Mahabharata, one can say, is transcendental because it has Gita in it. You see, so yes, they are considered Atihas if you look at, but from the another sense, Ramayana in itself is a pure transcendental literature, and which is in our line. If you think about it, it's very close to Bhagavatam. You know, it can get as close as to Bhagavatam. The only difference where Bhagavatam slightly supersedes Ramayana is because of the sweetness of the pastimes of Krishna, Mataji. Not that the Lord Ram's pastimes are not very sweet, but you see, Krishna's pastimes slightly supersedes Ramayana pastimes, because there are so many of them, and the reason why this supersedes is, you see, the Lord Ram, he's Maryada Purushottam. So whatever pastimes he enacts, he has to do it within the Maryada, whereas Krishna has no Maryada. On top of that, he is, he's considered Leela Purushottam. Why? Because he doesn't do things in Maryada. Second, he is also considered one who's a Venudhari, where Lord Ram does not have the Venu. So his flute pastimes come into place. Then the beauty is explained as Lord Ram is extremely beautiful. But when it comes to Krishna, he is all attractive. There is nothing higher than Krishna in that sense. So I hope that answers your question, Rupa Mataji. And I wanted to, now that you asked me the question, I want to thank you for taking that service of the Rath Yatra and taking the devotees and encouraging us to try and distribute Prabhupada books. Wonderful service, Rupa Mataji. Well done. Please tell us how you get on with that on that day, and let us know the feedback.
Yes, Prabhuji, absolutely. Your blessings and, all the devotees' blessings and Srila Prabhupada's mercy, Krishna's mercy. I hope it goes well, and yeah, I will tell you all about it. Thank you very much.
Thank
Hare
you, Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I have a comment here from Shriji Kishori Mataji, who has a wonderful initiated name. Enlightening class. Thank you, Mataji. Krishnavani Mataji, are you trying to say something? Yes, Shailesh Prabhu or Kirti Mataji, you have raised your hand. Please go ahead and say something if you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for a wonderful class, really enlightening. Just clarify, Itihasis are only two. The Puranas don't fall under the Itihasis. Itihasis are only Ramayana and Mahabharata.
Correct.
The Puranas are separate to the Itihasis.
Thank you for bringing that point. So when I said there were two angles, this was the second angle. Thank you, Shailesh Prabhu, for bringing it that. Very nice. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hari Bol, Prabhuji.
Just a reflection. People talk of impersonal forms and all that. But when we are living in this material world, and we do something, we are working on something, or reading about something, we like to visualize something. It's not that we visualize something which is formless. Our mind won't be able to adjust to it. And, even in the Vaikuntha planets, the Lord is worshipped in awe and reverence. But Krishna prefers a personal approach, like the Rajarasis. So here in the Back to Godhead magazine of May-June 22, there's a wonderful article about the majestic glory of Sri Sri Rukmani Dwarikadhish. And I'm just reading quickly from one of the excerpts here. Krishna says, knowing my opulences, the whole world looks upon me with awe and veneration, Krishna says. But devotion made fail by reverence does not attract me. This is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita 316. So what Krishna is saying, over reverence is fine, but I want a more personal, intimate approach. And when you have a relationship with someone, you can't build something personal when you are in awe and reverence. You have to be carefree with that. So, yes, our goal is Krishna.
Very nice, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, very, very powerful. Our goal is indeed Krishna, and that's what we are aspiring for, actually. So, as long as we are conscious of it, that helps, actually. That really does help. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, Prabhus and Matajis, thank you so much for your association this evening. I wish you all a wonderful Krishna conscious evening, and we will see you all tomorrow at the same time. Well, not the same time as now, but at 7:45. Please log in. The link will be shared either tomorrow morning, hopefully, and then you get a chance. Please give your full attention and time to Mahotsav Prabhu. If not anything else, we will all walk away with some inspiration to learn the art of distributing Bhagavatam sets. It doesn't have to be necessarily on the streets. That's one way Prabhu is doing, but he is inspiring many, and there are many things hopefully which will come out which will help us to share and connect with the many other people. So one thing I wanted to say that tomorrow is Wednesday. I believe my session for presenting the Bhagavatam is there tomorrow, but I would not be doing it because we have Mahotsav Prabhu coming in. So if you have circulated that flyer already to someone and someone has confirmed, then come back to me and we will either reschedule or I'll try to do it. If you've got more than 1 or 2 people committed, I will still do the presentation on a different link. But if you haven't circulated it, then perhaps we can just all tune in and take some energy from Mahotsav Prabhu and carry on this missionary activity of distributing the Bhagavatam sets over the next couple of months as we get closer to the Bhadra Purnima. Thank you all very much. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubheva patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, for a wonderful class. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Saraswati Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Namaste.
Hare
Namaste.
Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
everyone.
Krishna. Gauranga Hari Hari.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Jyoti Mataji, for your services. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna,
Bye,
everyone. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.